Hey guys, it's Oak. Welcome back to my channel. Last night I was asked to tank for a heroic raid, and I realized that I had not made a tanking sequence for my druid as of yet. So here we go. Let's build a sequence. Now, believe it or not, I haven't really made a new Guardian Druid sequence in a really long time. I've been using a variation of the same sequence probably since Warlords of Draenor. I've just updated it slightly as the different expansions went on. So when I had to start fresh in the War Within or pre-patch, I've been putting it off. But it still seems to be a pretty simple sequence to make, so let's go. So I'm creating these sequences around the Wowhead recommended builds for Raid and Mythic Plus for pre-patch. So as you can see, I have the Mythic Plus pre-patch build here, and I have the Raid pre-patch build here. There's really not much difference between the two and how you would play. So I'm switching back to Mythic Plus because that's just the one that I like to test out more. So with my sequence, I will be calling one in-game WoW macro, and that's to reapply Moonfire on a new target. So what you do is go to macro, M-A-C-R-O, open it up, go to your character specific macros, and you'll want to create one. I will try to export one with my sequence, but basically what it's doing is doing a cast sequence that'll reset on target and combat after a cast of Moonfire. So I've put two null spells here just to try to make it so it stops. Cast sequences have been a little finicky since pre-patch came out. Sometimes it will reapply a Moonfire even though it has these nulls there. I don't know why. I don't know how to avoid it, but it does a pretty good job of only casting a Moonfire whenever you target a new target or reselect your current target. So that is the only in-game macro that I'm calling with this sequence. We're going to do a GSE, go to Sequences, New Sequence. I'm going to name one Oak Bear Single Target. Then I'm going to go into the number 1 tab. I'm going to make sure it resets on combat, so I have that checked. And the first block, I'm just going to have it call that Moonfire. So I named that Moon Spam, so Moon Spam. Now this has to be exactly as it is spelled, so make sure you don't have any spaces before or after it in order for it to call that macro. So just do a quick save just to get it started. And we have the start of our new sequence. Now I want to go into a priority loop. So click on loop, switch this to priority. I only want it to repeat once. And in this block, I'm going to do my rage spenders. So the way I built my sequence is in such a way that it will only cast Maul or Raise if it's one of the free casts that are available with the Tooth and Claw talent. So Tooth and Claw basically makes it so your auto attacks have a 20% chance to give you a free Raise or Maul. So the way that I'm doing that is I want most of my rage to go into Ironfur. So I built a cast line in such a way that you do cast, and then you put a mod control. And if you're mousing over a dead player, then it will cast a rebirth. So it will basically battle res that player if they're dead and you're holding control over them. The other thing it'll do is if you're holding control, then it'll do a Frenzied Regeneration. So it's going to do a Frenzied Regeneration using your rage for that instead of going into Ironfur. Then finally, if you're not holding control, it will just cast an Ironfur. So that'll be your defensive. Finally, I put another line after this that will cast a Maul, since this is the single target version. So Ironfur is not on the GCD. So if you're not holding down control, it's going to get to this block and cast Ironfur if you have the rage for it. But if you don't have the rage for it, then it will try to cast Maul, but you won't have the rage for that either. So it won't cast that and it'll just move on to the next block. What it will do is if you have a free Maul, it'll skip past the Ironfur since that Ironfur is off the GCD, and cast your free maul. Now in the AOE version, basically all we're doing is we're going to replace that word maul with raise. Now I do want to put a housekeeping block up here at the top. And what I mean by housekeeping block is I want a block that will put us into bear form. I also want to put a block that will target an enemy and start our attack. So we'll go ahead and put target enemy, no harm, dead. We're going to put a no form, bear. We don't need it to say no channeling. So no form and then bear. I'm going to put a start attack. Then I'm going to put our CC and dispels on here. So if you hold Alt, it will hibernate a unfriendly unit. Or if you're mousing over a friendly unit, then it'll remove corruption. Let's go ahead and save. All right, now let's get back into our priority loop. So after our rage spenders, I'm going to go ahead and put our rotation in here. I like to have a block that has bark skin in it. I like to gate a recast of our Moonfire behind bark skin. So this is the way that I would do that, is I would do a cast sequence with bark skin and then Moonfire. So basically it'll bark skin, then it'll Moonfire again. And then it will wait until it is able to do another bark skin before the next Moonfire happens. So bark skin has a 32-second cooldown, which means that after that 32 seconds, it'll cast another Moonfire, basically. So you can do that with some abilities, is you can use another ability that has a cooldown to kind of gate your recast of a dot in this instance. So unlike prior videos, I'm going to go ahead and put my trinkets in here. So let's go ahead and put our trinkets in here. So we have it'll only be cast in combat, no channeling, at player, just in case it's one of those type of trinkets. And then either 13 or 14 or both. So let's do another block. Let's get our mangle. Let's do another block. Now I do like to put my berserk or incarnation into the sequence. While incarnation is off of the global cooldown, berserk is not. So I have to put it in a block. So that's what we're doing here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a sequential block within this priority loop. So I'm going to create another loop within here. I'm going to make it sequential, but this time I want it to repeat twice. So I want it to go through this loop twice before it moves back to the beginning. So I'm going to basically put my rotational abilities such as Mangle again. And then I'm going to put Thresh and Swipe. Hit save. And that should essentially be our sequence. So I'm going to make an AOE version by just renaming this to AE, hitting save, and changing my spender block to have raise instead of maul. Now something I do want to show you is when I made that Berserker Incarnation line, you can see here that the game is reading this as Berserk even though it says Incarnation here. So the number of characters used is using these characters here, because Incarnation is essentially the same spell as Berserk, it's just an upgraded version. So let's go find some target dummies and try it out. I'll show you a couple macros that I use in game also when I'm playing Druid. If you have this macro, then you can just mouse over a friendly target or even yourself and cast your free regrowth on them. So what I usually do is I'll save that and I'll put it on one of my either shift modifiers. So I have it here on shift 5 or I'd put it on an alt modified key. And that way, if you're noticing my sequence, I have a lot of the blocks that just say no mod shift or alt. So that just means if I'm holding down shift or alt, then it won't do what it says in that block. So I have that for regrowth. All right, so now we're going to bind these to keys. So we'll go to key bindings, new. We'll do single target. I do the left bracket and click save. And then new. and then right bracket for AOE, and click save. I'll go ahead and close this and try it out. See all the iron furs that is keeping up. It's going pretty crazy with that. But obviously that's inside Incarnation. Now what you can do with that Moonfire block is when you get a proc of this, you can just either click away from your target and it'll retarget something. And because of that macro that's in there, it'll cast a Moonfire. So you can click off of your target. Because it's getting a new target, it thinks that you're casting Moonfire on a new target. You can also hit tab to go through your different targets, and it will cast a Moonfire on those new targets. Now it has to wait until it gets to that block, so I don't like how not often is casting Moonfire when I'm targeting a new target, so I'm going to change that in my sequence. And let's go into our sequence, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this to be at the top of my priority loop. So one way you can do that is you see the block path number here. Right now is block path 1. If I move this to within this loop, then it's going to get rid of the first block here. So this loop's going to end up being 2.1 to be the first thing in that loop. So you're going to put 2.1 and just hit OK. And it should put it in front of the spinders, which it did. So then you can click save, and that'll move it to where you wanted it to be. So now it's the highest priority thing in here is to recast the Moonfire if I target a new target. Something else that I wanted is I wanted it to mangle more often. So I'm going to move my mangle above my Barkskin and Moonfire block here. And actually, Barkskin is off of the GCD, so let's just get rid of this Barkskin block altogether. And I'm going to add it after a mangle. And we will just manually recast Moonfire by either clicking off the target or by targeting a new target. So I'm getting rid of that block and then saving. So now I have Barkskin built in here. Let's go ahead and save. Let's actually move our trinkets to this block. Now I'll tell you the reason that I'm doing that is right now I am using the Grief Torch. The Grief Torch is actually on the GCD. So because I put it in this block and Incarnation and Rage of the Sleeper are both off the GCD, then it will get to that trinket because it's the only thing that's on GCD in this block. So because I'm using Grief Torch, that's why I have no channeling in pretty much every block here. So I don't interrupt my Grief Torch if it goes off. So let's go ahead and save. Let's try this again. The Grief Torch is not going off. There we go. So now if I target a new target, it should do a new Moonfire, and it does. Alright, we had a Galactic Guardian proc, target a different target, Moonfire goes off. Again, Moonfire goes off. Again, Moonfire goes off. So the way I'm getting that Moonfire to spam is I'm just targeting a new target in the pack. And that's using my Galactic Guardian proc. Now the other way you can do that is if you get a Galactic Guardian proc, you can just hit escape it'll untarget your main target, and because it has to retarget, then it will recast your Moonfire, because we have it on a cast sequence that has a target reset on it. So again, I'm just hitting escape and it casts Moonfire. See, Galactic Guardian goes off like mad. Now just to show regarding the control, if I hold down control, it should pop one of my Frenzied Regenerations. So I'm going to hold down control and it's doing a Frenzied Regen. It would work the same way if I had a dead player around me. I could hold down control and then cast on that dead player if they to Battle Rez them. If you look at my details breakdown, you'll see that it's casting Moonfire and Mango Rays a lot. So even though I have Rays built behind my Iron Fur, you can still see that it's going off quite a bit. So I think that's pretty successful. And we're going to try it against a tanking dummy. So let's go into bear form, charge in, and start a single target. You see I have a proc of the free heal, so I'm going to just cast that on myself. I have another proc of the free heal, so I'm going to cast that on myself. And I'm doing that by just holding shift and using my macro that I created. No, I think this is working. I think we're good to go. Because of the way I wrote the trinkets in there, I should be able to hit either Alt or Shift, and it'll make my Grief Torch go off. So I'm going to hold Shift, and it makes my Grief Torch go off. So that's it. We now have a bear sequence. So, as usual, I'll put the sequence link down below. You can get it off of wildlazymackers.com or the GSE United Discord. Both will be in the description. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message on the GSE United Discord or through wildlazymackers.com. I will tell you I'm quicker to respond on the Discord. But thank you again for watching. Be sure to hit the like button down below. I really appreciate it if you were to subscribe. And as always, I like all the comments that you have down below. I try to respond to as many as I can. And thank you again, and have a great day.